think he said we can go. I'll call to order the March 1st, 2023 Fishers Plan Unit Development Committee meeting. We do have a quorum to conduct business. First matter is Roush Automotive. It is a request to approve site design and architecture for an addition to the existing Tom Roush Auto dealership. And we have Bree King presenting on behalf of the city.
Hello all, welcome to the PUD meeting tonight. So here on the screen you can see the location of this project. You've probably driven past the existing building many times. So this is just to the west of State Road 37, and Trade Center Drive is there as well. So here you can see the existing structure. You can see that it is a more modern look. There's plenty of glazing, and we have the Lincoln name right on the front there. On this elevation, you can see here, the existing building is shown in red, and then what is being added is shown in black. So you can see that it's continuing the motif along. It's a very small addition comparative to the existing structure. But it does complement the existing structure nicely. In my staff report, you may have seen that we recommended a mural be added if possible to fit in with the character of State Road 37 with the new murals that we're having, such as Alderman Auto and the Starbucks going in. However, this may be an issue due to national branding requirements. So the petitioner will be able to provide more information on that when they come up to speak as well. So these are the west and north elevations of that addition. So you can see once again, it's just continuing what's already there. It fits seamlessly with the original structure and has even captured many of the exterior elements utilized in the original design. And then here you can see that south elevation still blending in very nicely. So staff does recommend approval as presented. We believe that the building meets all the architectural requirements within the PUD and will complement the character of the development. And we do have the petitioners here as well if you'd like to hear from them.
Thank you. We'll call the petitioner up now.
Good evening. My name is Mike Belay with Belay Architects here in Fishers, 8482 Weaver Woods Place. And I'm the architect on this project, and it's really a pretty straightforward addition to the service department only. We're not adding on to the front retail showroom areas. So we're sticking with the existing split face masonry materials on the exterior walls. And I know there was a request from staff about this mural, which I know you're really pushing for public art, which we're in favor of, but I'm going to let Andy address. Andy's the general manager of the store, and he's going to address some of the franchise restrictions that we're operating under regarding the architecture of the building. Thank you.
Thank you for having us today. I'm Andy Wernsman. I'm the general manager, as Mike said, of Tom Roush Lincoln. This is Tommy Roush. He's one of the heirs to the Lincoln store. And we have a store in Westfield too, a Mazda store. They run a really good operation and take really good care of their employees, which is really important. So we're going to also add a lot of employees for this. And I will tell you that Lincoln, as we go through this process, they're involved in the architecture and how it has to look. If there's something that they want us to add at that time, we will, similar to the front of the elevation. Most likely this will be approved by them because that's how most dealerships look. But we feel very comfortable with this, and we know it's going to make for a nice elevation in Fishers, Indiana. So, any questions?
Thank you for your comments. Board members, any questions?
I just have a couple quick questions. I'm just a citizen here, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes reading these, it's easier to see a picture than it is to see this here. So this is why I have the question. So when I drove by earlier, I noticed there's a brick band that's a different color around the current existing structure. Will that continue along the addition?
You know, yes. There's your answer, yes.
Yes. Okay. And then just kind of curiosity's sake, there's not a whole lot of space there for show. Are most of the cars and the stock going to be across the street at the overflow lot, and then it will remove the parking of the stock?
Yeah, that's a great
there
question.
On that north side?
All that parking that we'll be eliminating is actually service parking for cars that we're working on, throughout the day, the week, the month. And then around the perimeter are retail cars. The overflow lot, and now even some of the service cars, will go across on the other side. I think we have 2.5 acres over there, Tommy, is that right? So, and we plan on using that for that.
Okay. Final thing I had, there is and this is maybe not something we need to talk about at this meeting, and city, let me know if that's the case. There is a chain link fence along the front, and it's only in front of your building. Is that a part of the previously approved, or is that would be your property, correct?
There's a chain link in the front of
The front, I'm sorry, the east facing, so along 37. It just is from literally the beginning of your lot to the end of the lot as you go north.
Tommy, do you know? That was there when we bought the building. Yeah.
Okay. It doesn't look like any of the other buildings around the area really have any sort of fencing, or there's some landscaping, which
Right.
looks like you're definitely going to continue on with the landscaping. you
Is it on
currently have.
the north side of the?
It's on
South.
the west side, so
West
along
side.
37. It runs along 37 in the berm there, or in the ditch.
Yeah.
The culvert?
Okay, I know what you're talking about. I think that was there
Yeah.
when they bought it. That's the state probably had that there.
Okay.
Yeah. You want us to take it down? We'll be.
It's pretty raggedy. I'm
Yeah.
not going to lie. It looks
Okay.
pretty bad.
Yeah. I think we'd be more than open to taking that down. We just figured this state
Obviously,
probably.
I think that staff will need to comment on whether or not they can
Yeah.
take that down, but it looks, none
Yeah.
of the other buildings do, and it is in terrible shape.
Well, the other side of that is we have to try to keep that mowed and keep
Yeah.
the trash out of
Probably
it.
makes it easier.
Yeah, it would be easier. So, but I think we probably thought that had to be there. I don't know, Tommy, you got any opinion? Yeah.
I assume so. It looks like it's been there for quite a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah, we'll confirm with our engineering department whose property it's on to make sure it's not in right of way, but then we can.
I think it's in the right of way.
Okay. Yes, but I can ask our engineering department about why it's there to make
It looks
sure
like
it's
all
not
the
for
other
safety
buildings
purposes.
have either removed or, all the other structures along there. And I just noticed it was just on this lot.
Yeah, straight.
So
Yeah.
it's like a fence that goes from here to here, but doesn't fence anything in.
Okay.
You're
I
right.
can
it
speak to
doesn't.
that, I think.
It's a trash
I can,
collector.
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
The fence was originally part of the 37 project when 37 went in years ago. They've since removed the requirement to fence off the interstate from other properties, and that's why they've allowed property owners or properties to remove that fence as they've done projects. I think it is within the right of way, but I think NDOT will let you remove it. I think it's a matter of, I'm not sure who you would contact to remove it.
Well, we could give you
It
that
might be
contact
interesting.
information.
You'll contact
Yeah,
for
and-
us? Okay. Because
and
we can take
Megan,
it down right away.
Okay, Megan's online, so
Sorry.
Megan, go ahead.
I was just, it might be easier right now, Sean, and for the the Roush folks there, since the city is currently managing State Road 37, we took over the management of that whole area when we took on the construction of State Road 37 and the roundabout. So I'm sure that we have a direct contact and maybe an expedited way for us to review that. But my only comment was about the fence. So, and I'm sorry, Emily, I'll let you go back to your questions.
That was my last one, so
May I, Sean?
all good. I will stop talking. Thank you.
I just had a couple of questions on the. I agree, and as an architect who looks at these all the time, the drawing was a little bit hard to read because it was just flat 2D. It would 3D images would have helped to be able to get an idea of kind of the perspective of it. the existing north elevation, are there existing service doors there, or do all the vehicles pull in on the east and pull out on the west currently?
Yeah, they pull in on the west side. There's no doors there now.
Okay, so you're adding, these
We're
are all
adding
new
all
doors.
that. Correct.
I think the only comment I would have would be the Alderman building. Now, those face 37, but the doors that face 37 are all glass.
Right.
And I think these doors are going to be pretty visible from south-facing traffic. I don't know if anybody has any concern if there should be a common theme, if those should be glass similar to the Alderman ones,
think
since
they
you're
are
going to
glass,
see
aren't
them from that southbound lane.
Yeah, they're glass.
Okay, it was
Yeah.
hard to, like I said, it was hard to
Yeah.
tell in the drawings. It looked like
Yeah.
it was maybe solid with a glass section in it.
Could be, there's two sections of glass, but if you want us to go all glass,
Yeah.
you guys agreeable with that? I think it's a better look.
Yeah. No
Yeah,
question.
obviously it would provide more natural light for your
Yeah.
staff, and I just think that is a little bit more inviting to customers as well.
Okay.
So you can kind of see what's going on. Yeah, yeah, it's not going to be glaring or anything. So that was the only other comment I had.
Good question.
Thanks, Sean. I would just suggest, Pete stated this earlier, that perhaps Jason Taylor with engineering with Fishers can coordinate any interaction with the Indiana Department of Transportation as it relates to that fence issue,
Okay.
to coordinate that.
And since I have to deal with NDOT almost on a daily basis, I'm all about asking for forgiveness rather than permission. So,
Right.
and say,
We'll
oops, I
take it
took it
down
down, you
tomorrow.
mean I wasn't supposed to? So I'll let you guys deal and Jason deal with that. If no one else got any other comments, I'm going to make a motion for a favorable recommendation or approval. I
Thanks.
don't have my attorney here to tell me which one I have to do.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Kay, roll call, please.
Ms. Baumgartner?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Curran?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Bowman?
Yes.
And Mr. Stevenson?
Yes, the motion carries.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next matter is case number PUD-22-19, Parkview Towns, a request for a PUD committee.
Just to clarify on that last motion,
Sorry?
that was with the condition for the glass doors, just so we have that on the record? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Next matter is PUD-22-19, Parkview Towns, PUD committee approval request for a townhome development. The current zoning is PUD Saxony. The subject site is located southeast of the intersection of 134th Street and Minden Drive. And we have Bree King once again for the city to present. Thank you.
Hello, so here you can see the project location as in that nice little vacant spot there. The surrounding buildings that are already existing are Parkside Towns, currently known as Section 1. I'll touch on that in our handy-dandy project history. So in 2021, this area was brought before you all as the PUD committee for review as Parkside Towns at Saxony Section 2. So at that time, the elevations provided were identical to what is built in Section 1, which you can see on your screen here. So due to some conflicts with Lennar Homes and the existing HOA, the design has now been changed, which is why we're coming back before you. So now Parkview Towns wants to be viewed as its own entity with its own HOA. Because of this new identity and the size constraints of the area, Lennar has presented an alternate design to mirror the separation of the two communities. Based on our last conversations with Lennar, they are still willing to work with the HOA and intended to attend an HOA meeting on February 27th with the HOA. However, they did not have quorums. They are not able to meet. Here you can see a little more clearly what Section 1 looks like. So you can see it's a very modern look. When Section 1 came before you all, we did recommend this color scheme as it is unique to Saxony. So you can see the sloping roofs, the cool blues, and the masonry really have a high quality project out there. This is the proposed site plan, so it has changed since you all saw it as Parkside Town Section 2. So there's an additional entrance to the north that would allow that Parkview HOA not to have to infringe upon the other roadways. And you can see it is 4 buildings that we are looking at tonight. I'll go through these elevations rather quickly, as you all have shown. It is easier to look at photos. So here are the architectural elevations. You can see both the front and the back. So units do have masonry on the back, and then a mix on the front. Here is what a 4-unit would look like. Once again, very similar. They have the Madison E's on the center, and then the end units are different and full masonry. You'll also have 1 3-unit. And then here are the photos, which is much easier to see what they look like there. So you can see this is not quite a modern style. This is more what we would call colonial. You can see that the pitched roofs are stark contrast to what's already out there at Parkside Towns. We do want to provide this information that the applicant provided us as to the neighborhood character. So you can kind of see big picture improvements that will be coming to Saxony. You'll see the townhomes themselves shown, as well as the Silver Collection, which is an apartment development on the opposite side of the street, and then future potential development that has not yet been approved or reviewed. This image calls out different elevations in the area, different architectural styles. So while Saxony is a unique PUD in that it encourages a mix of architectural styles, that mix is interpreted to be a mix for the entire Saxony community. So staff is of the opinion that this one block would look nice rather being one motif instead of having the old school colonial as well as the modern. Staff also feels that 2 HOAs in one block would not be realistic, as there are common roads, common area to maintain. The addition of an entire separate entity would complicate these matters for residents, just cause more issues down the line is what we're foreseeing. Here you can see from the street looking east, so you can see that very stark juxtaposition of the modern look and then the more colonial as well. Then here you can see what the apartments across the street will look like. So staff at this point does recommend denial of this petition. We believe the proposal will not complement the character of the surrounding development of Section 1 and would prefer the existing modern motif be continued to complete this block. We do request that the petitioner continue to work with staff and the existing HOA to continue the architecture from Section 1. And we do have the petitioners here as well for a presentation.
Thank you. We'll call the petitioner now.
Good evening, Tony Bagato with Lennar Homes of Indiana. 11555 North Meridian Street in Carmel is our address. And I really want to thank staff. I'm sure they're honestly probably tired of talking to me about this. We've spent a year since being here today trying to get through this, the conflicts we've had with the HOA, trying to come to agreement, because in all honesty, we would prefer to build the same units as well. We would prefer to have one HOA. It's easier on everyone, easier from a management of the HOA. But in reality, this is a separate piece of property, and we have been unable to get them to agree to some of the terms we put forth with a compensation agreement for the area that we've offered, that we would need to get a little bit more land back to replat of the common area. So that's where we are here today. We had initially scheduled for January, and we did receive the comments from Vertis, and so we continued 1 month for that to address those comments. And then before the December hearing, we got a call and talked to Megan about reaching out to the HOA members again. We met in person, and she spent an evening with us and the members there, and was very thankful for her time there. And we thought it was positive. We thought it was going well, and we're hoping to be able to pull this off the agenda actually back in January, but it's been delayed in trying to get the agreement worked out. And as indicated by Bree, there was not enough members for a quorum on Monday. And right now we've been told they're not willing to look at it unless there's some other maybe changes, but we don't, we're not there yet where we don't know what they are. So we're here tonight because they told us that they really didn't want to talk about it anymore. And so we're hoping that could change, but we're here tonight to move forward with the petition we have. And so, as Bree said, this is within the Saxony PUD. It's a mixed-use PUD, a large area. That star there indicates the area that she covered. It is zoned part of A2, which is mixed use. So it's allowed everywhere from retail and different residential uses. It's a standalone property that, when was first being developed by Lennar in 2018, we started with Section 1, and you'll see in the corner there was actually talks. The landowner, Republic, was in talks with a boutique hotel. So it would have laid out a hotel on the corner with a parking lot in the middle area, and along the roadway to the west that would have been around the townhomes. So that's the plan Lennar at the time moved forward with, and otherwise if we would have had the chance to build it all at once, we would have. But it would remain a separate property with the potential to being a hotel. That never came to fruition, so then we had discussions with Republic, and we started a process for doing a new primary plat. So this was the plat that was approved last March, a year ago, and it laid out Section 2 is what we were calling it, approved on March 2nd. It had less than 3,500 square feet there in yellow that is part of the existing common area today that's not on our property. It's part of the HOA that was turned over and established with the residents. So that's the area that we've offered some compensation into the reserves, or we think a substantial conservation for this minimal amount of area, but it would help us get the units we needed and create the layout with better flow for this unit design. And like I said, we spent a year trying to work through that. Unfortunately, that has not been able to be worked out. So the HOA, again, not approved the annexation of us to be in their HOA and not approved the replat of the common area. So we're here today to ask for consideration as a standalone property, because if we don't build here, either another builder will build townhomes and they'll have their own HOA as well, or there'll be a commercial property, which from my perspective as a planner, I wouldn't think that's the highest best use. I think a parking lot in that middle area with trash cans and delivery services would not be ideal for those residents. I think townhomes, even as a separate HOA, is still the best use, would be my opinion. So we did have to come up with revisions, and honestly, we went through 15 different site plans internally. They saw several of those throughout the way to try to get one that worked. This is the one that could fit all the zoning requirements, so that when we come back with our secondary plat, it would be approved without a public hearing because it's less units. We have reduced area in land that we can't work with from that 3,500 square feet. So the unit we're proposing today, there are some interior units that are a little bit smaller. If we had to build the existing ones today, we would lose another unit or two, and to build either 13 or 12 units when we're already down to 14, we just don't feel that it's going to be feasible with the constraints of the site and moving some of the utilities around. And so we feel that this is the best character going forward with a reduced density. And again, it would be a separate HOA because it's a separate property, and we can't change that fact. So in here I labeled it as prairie, but Bree was right. These are colonial design, so it's a new architectural proposal. These elevations are actually different than what she presented, so I'm not sure if your packet had these ones. These are changes that were made based on comments from Veritas that I'm going to cover. Again, it's colonial design, not prairie, but we are down to 14 townhomes, and originally it was 17. Saxony's DRB, so they have a design review board that approves the plans, and we have received approval from them. And then here's the elevations for the other units. So there's a 2-unit building, a 3-unit, a 4-unit, and a 5. I'll highlight that the 4-unit building is the one in the middle, so it's not going to be visible from any of the perimeter streets. It's only visible for the internal roadway. And then here's a side elevation that would also have 1-story brick wrap all the way around. And then that photo that Bree showed, those are being built today in Carmel at a project called Legacy at 146th Street. And it's been well accepted by Carmel, and they've been, they like the variety from some of the other architecture we have in the community. And then this was just done to kind of give a side-by-side comparison. It's not a true indication because there would be a 2-unit building between the building on the right and this building on the left, but there would be that building on the right, a 2-unit one with with gaps in the landscaping, and then the 5-unit on the corner. I just couldn't get it fit in the presentation when I made this screenshot. So from Saxony's standpoint, I went through all the ordinances through the years. There was several in the beginning that repealed and replaced, but the original that's still standing is the 08, 02, 04B that was adopted in 2004. There was no architectural standards, but there is reference in Section 4 of the PUD that states there's a Saxony Development Pattern and Design Guideline that was adopted in 2001, and it's meant to be used as a reference as the design standards for the community. And in my past experience here at Fishers, on the planning side, these were used as the guidelines for the community, not the UDO. So I know there's reference to the matrix in the UDO that I'm not going to address those points because we feel that we should be held to these standards similar to the other ones in the past. And so there's some points in here I'm going to highlight that talks about a homogeneous style of architecture through the Commerce District, which this is part of, should be discouraged. There's actually supposed to be a streetscape, and architecture should be compatible, but ideally provide the illusion of a commerce center that evolved over time. Primary base colors should be feature neutral tones and hues. Buildings should be sited at the right-of-way line or build line with sidewalks in between them and the facade and the street. And then architectural styles and designs which establish and create visual interest with pedestrian characterization by use of traditional design features. So dormers, steep porches, roofs, front porches, etc. should be encouraged. And then there talks about real elevations of the building should be consistent with the front of the facade. So with that, I went through, again, this is the overall, Saxony highlight. You can see a variety of architectural styles, and I would highlight from my review of the PUD and my experience here over the years in Fishers reviewing Saxony, most of the residential buildings are actually colonial. There's some 2-story ones, and the 3-story homes resemble colonial styles. In the single family, you even get gables and dormers that are more in line with, I would say, our colonial homes. The more modern designs fall on the commercial buildings. And so even though, we built the modern design, and I think they're good-looking buildings, I would make the argument that these buildings are actually more compatible with the overall residential character of Saxony. And again, variety of style, traditional design similar to the proposal. So I went through the other approvals. This is a modern design that was approved recently, was not compared to the UDO from an architectural standard standpoint, and it was PUD approved. Silver Collection, this is the one that Bree talked about. It's across the street from us, so it's a 5-story apartment complex that's a different style completely from either modern or prairie or colonial. And again, it was not compared to the UDO. There's no matrix for this proposal, and it was approved by the PUD. This beautiful building by a wonderful architect that I know, Sean Kern, designed Village Dentistry. This was approved. Again, this one was actually in these staff reports. They were checklists on how they complied with the Saxony guidelines. And it was not compared to the UDO in those standards at that time, and it was PUD approved. This is Section 1. Again, it was reviewed based on the design guidelines. There was actually a comment to make the color more in keeping with the natural warm tones mentioned that I mentioned from the guidelines. Again, not compared to the UDO standards, and again, PUD approved. Indiana Members Credit Union, the building that got built, I think looks better than the elevation, but was reviewed based on the guidelines, and again, not compared to the UDO, and PUD approved that one. And then the villas at Saxony, these are single-family product that are, they have a mix of colonial and some other styles in there, but these have dormers and some brick wainscot that we were trying to match as well. So again, reviewed on the Saxony guidelines, not compared to the UDO, and approved by the PUD. So when we received the initial comments from Veritas, we went through those letters, and if you see the top one, that's the one Bree had in her presentation. That was the original proposal. That's the one we're actually building in Carmel. We asked for the continuance because we made modifications. We lowered our roof pitch during that time down to 412 to be more in keeping with the modern design. We added the brick wainscot on the interior units so that it would match not just the townhomes next to us, but also the villas I just mentioned. And then we are willing to provide warmer tones. That was one of the comments by Veritas, that we didn't have a color rendering redone, but we're willing to commit to colors that is more in line with the modern townhomes next to us. The other comments they made we didn't want to address because we felt it took away from, again, it would be colonial design, but they're trying to take pieces away from this building to make it look more modern, when we feel that would not be in keeping with the colonial design. It actually would be worse. And so we made changes that we felt were in keeping with the design character and the intent, and we could feel would be compatible still with the community. So in summary, and this slide was up there, yeah, we want to show, if we looked at our site as a bubble, I would definitely say the contrast is huge, right? If you're just looking at a two piece of property as a standalone project and nowhere else, I would definitely see the concern. But from my standpoint, when you look at Saxony as a whole, and we're looking at a very small percentage of the land for our site, there's a mix of architecture that we're more compatible with, and there's a mix that doesn't even match either one of the styles we're proposing. And there's a shown potential for a future hotel, caddy corner from this site that will be multi-story. Right now it's a 3D kind of schematic, but it most likely will be a modern design that's flat roofed. So there's a whole variety in this area. And as again, this property is separate from the townhome HOA. We can't change that today as much as we've tried and would like to. If it's not built as townhomes either by us or someone else, it could be made commercial. As I mentioned, I don't think that's in the best interest of the community for the townhome community there. The site plan complies with all the zoning standards, and then the architecture, I believe, meets the intent of the guidelines I provided. It has warm tones, it's street appeal, we have consistency with the other buildings within the Saxony, and it would feel that if we were following that same checklist in the previous staff reports, we would meet those. And then it was approved by Saxony's own design review board, and I do have Sean McKennis here as representative from Republic if you need any questions from him as well. And then we've delayed filing, as I mentioned, almost a year now, to try to address all the concerns both from the HOA and the staff. And we feel, that at this point we need to move forward and have a decision and know where we stand, and we'll look to, your comments and feedback. And I'll pull the elevations back up because they tend to go back since there's a lot of history to cover, but we need to talk about the architecture, so.
Thank you, Tony, for that presentation and the background and the context. To show us how we got to where we are now.
Yeah.
Board members, comments, questions?
Of course I have questions. Okay, so on the, is there modulation between each unit, or which ones from, so I drove through, let's say, Princeton Woods, right? So this is pretty similar architecture to Princeton Woods, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, slightly more modernized, but is there modulation between the units? And so the two units that are going to be mostly the siding, are those going to be the same color? Are they going to be different colors? What is that going to look like?
So normally the 3 brick would look similar to each other, and the 2 interior non-brick would look similar to each other. But there are recesses between, so there is some depth there, and there's also those front porches that have some nice trellis work. There was some detailed close-up photos I included in the packets, I think, to show some of that articulation and detailing that's done. But there is relief. And again, the colors are something we are definitely willing to look at and continue to address. That's not necessarily a difficult thing for us to do. But like we said, we're willing to commit to colors that are more in keeping with the townhomes next door.
Okay. Well, you brought up the porches and the details there of the pictures that you sent. Although I totally understand we're trying to stay colonial, to me, it's a pretty dated look. And when you were talking about I think one of the things that was in the Saxony was the evolution over time. They don't need to be the same necessarily. We need to evolve. So I think there's a way to evolve this colonial look into something more modern, which is what I think that the architectural review that we received was kind of going for. And I'm not going to say I'm not on that. I kind of go with what they said. I think that some of the detail work is too much for what we want to see in that evolution of a colonial home, shall we say, to go with the way the Saxony HOA presented it. So the keystones, the shutters, the detail work on the gables, those things to me present dated versus today's version of that. So that would be my commentary. The shutters. So did we remove the shutters?
No, there's,
There's still shutters.
yeah, those shutters will be on there. They're kind of hard to see in the drawings, but there will be shutters.
Okay, yeah. You know, that's another thing I feel like could modernize it. I would agree. I actually, funny enough, I didn't read the architectural review from Veritas, but my notes were basically the same as theirs. So that's my opinion there.
And just to clarify on the HOA conversation, because in our recent discussions, there could be a chance to bring the HOA back. I want to make clear that staff wants this to be built out in the same character as what Section 1 was. That will be consistent with that entire block. I think Lennar wants that as well. So we are aligned, and that's what the ultimate objective outcome that we want is. When I met with the HOA and Lennar was at that meeting, the majority of the residents also want that outcome. So it seems like everyone wants us to move in that direction, but there are some nuances in those conversations that have been challenging to get to some sort of resolution. So from where staff sits, we just want to make sure that we're thinking long-term about this entire block and what's best. And if it's meeting with the HOA again and me sitting down with Lennar and that HOA to come to some sort of resolution as a third party, I'm happy to have that conversation because staff believes that just it being built out as it was intentionally supposed to be for Section 2 is the best outcome for this development, for this block.
And so at this point, though, we're at kind of a crossroads. Whether we say we can approve this but prefer that, where do we come into play with that? Because, I mean, ideally, absolutely, architecturally, it should be in similar. I would say in similar style to Section 1. And even from a professional opinion on what I do for a living, secondary HOA here does not really benefit anyone. I think it can throw some hurdles in the real estate world moving forward in terms of assessments and who does what, and I've seen that before, and it doesn't usually work out well. So from a professional opinion, I don't like that, but we're here for architectural review, so where do we come into play with that?
And I would mention that, you know, if there's a way to consider this as an alternative, and if approved, we would go back to the HOA, and we have 30 days or so before we'd have construction plans complete and filed. We're willing to have those conversations, but some of the trouble we fall into is some of the residents know until we're approved, we have nothing to stand on. They feel like they can drag this out, or that the city's not going to approve this, and we have no way to, you know, nothing to hold over their head. Not that I want to use the hold over their head, but we feel it complies. It should be approved on that alone. If it's approved, then it gives us a little bit more, you know, substance to come back to them and say, look, we all would like to build the same thing here. Let's get this done. But right now, where we stand, some of the residents, they know we don't have that ability since these aren't approved.
So let me jump in here if I can. So, and this is going to tie into conversations that we're going to have in the next meeting after this, and it's going to tie into meetings that we're going to have at council. How many voting units do we have in the current development?
There's 31 units.
31 units. So you've got 31 votes?
Correct. Yeah.
Correct, because there's one vote per unit, right? It's not two, it's not husband and wife or
Right.
partner or whatever the case may be. So, and then the threshold to meet quota is what in their HOAs?
Well, we were told there was 21. We're not sure if that's correct, and that's one of the things we can.
Okay, so
look
you're
into.
almost at 75%?
Yeah.
Shocking. So now we're here at a business decision, and how many people did you have at your meeting, Tony?
We weren't invited to that one. I don't know how many came to that meeting. Did Marissa?
Do we have any idea what,
12 people.
oh, so it was only 12. So even 12 wouldn't have got there because you wouldn't have got to basically 16 if you were to be at 50%, right? So, and I understand. So we're kind of in a rock and a hard place here as it relates to what's going on. I have no issues with the architecture, Tony, whatsoever, right? I think you've got exactly what you're stating going on with this group. There's no real propensity for them to move because they either keep what they have the same, because Sean and his buddy up there in Toledo haven't got a hotel to put back there yet, right? And put a big giant parking lot with dumpsters and lots of lights, which we're going to get yelled at later on about, right? Or we're going to do something and we're going to say, hey, right, I'm willing to approve this as it stands today. However, we want to give the HOA another crack at this before we go anywhere, right? And the time period, Megan, I'm going to leave to you as to what you think may be necessary. But because I think that we're going to end up with someone's going to come back there and try to do something similar. We're going to be having the same conversation, whether it's with Lennar or Pulte or Ryan or somebody. They're going to come back. They're going to try to do that. It's very developable land. It's a very, advantageous position to be in up there. Saxony's a great development. People want to be up there. There's got to be a motivating factor for these guys to come out and vote, and I've always found that to be true. Like, let's go ahead and put a trash ordinance in there and tell everybody they got to have blue trash cans. So I get 572 emails saying I hate blue trash cans. So until those kind of things occur, and I hate being a heavy-handed guy, but at some point we're going to have to approve something that's going to go there, right? And it's going to be, if it's not Lennar, then you're going to have a different builder, which means it's going to be slightly different architecture anyways, because Lennar's the one who built it. My position is that...
Sorry, Pete.
Okay, so my position as it stands today is I would say I would approve on the architectural, which is what our chore is here at the PUD committee, right? We're not here to do much more than that, right, other than approve the architecture, because it meets all the architectural standards that I can see that we have as a group, right? It does meet them. Even with Veritas's comments, it does go back and meet them. But I would say that I would like to urge the homeowners, and let's do everything we possibly can from the city side to make sure we drag those folks into a meeting so that we can get quorum and we can get a real answer, right? If the real answer comes back that they don't want to do that and they don't want to let that go, I would say let's bring it back to square one again. But or something of that nature. We have to do something here, and I think just denying this is kind of kicking the can down the road. That's my opinion.
So this is Megan. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
Yes.
Pete, I totally hear you on wanting something to happen and wanting to work with the homeowners. I'm on the same opinion as Emily that this architecture seems like a step back. And I'm not supportive of the architecture as it is here. For Tony and for Lennar is the only reason that you're not, for the existing section, you're not doing that architecture here because you can't get the additional or the same amount of units as you can with this style?
That's one of the reasons, but I didn't address actually the main reason is when you have two separate HOAs, you're going to have two different landscape crews, two different maintenance crews for your roads. They're not going to know the difference between the two if they look the same. Even I would say if they're similar with different colors, they're still not going to know the same, right? And so that being a separate HOA was also that was our main intent, but the other intent was with the loss of land and trying to work through those different 15 design layouts with getting as many as we can without losing too much. We would lose additional units as well. But the other concern is the maintenance side and how did the crews that come out and deal with the two different HOAs know where to draw the line, really, because they don't see the lines on paper. It's not going to look like that in field.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like with a lot of those HOAs that are probably within Saxony right now, there's probably some sort of overlap there. To me, I don't feel that this architecture is justified enough by a loss of a unit and potential concerns with the property management of all of it. So short and sweet, I'm a no against this one, and I do still want us to be able to encourage the HOA to be able to come back and work together. That's where I'll be.
Thanks, Megan, for your comments.
So Tony, just so we can clarify, if you guys were to put the current architecture in on this plot, you guys lose how many units?
It would be at least one and potentially two, depending on the layout.
So if you lose 2 units, and Lennar is not willing to move forward after losing 2 units, is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, it really doesn't become feasible. Already 14 is a stretch.
Okay, so what you're saying is from an investment standpoint, the investment doesn't warrant you guys doing that because potentially you're not going to make any money, right?
Correct.
Which is, we're all capitalists at the end of the day, right? That you guys wouldn't make money by doing that.
Right.
Okay.
And I would say if there's a majority going with no, we would prefer a continuance, again, to still reach the HOA and maybe look at some changes, but I would like to hear comments if they're favorable or not from the other commissioners or committee members.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead, and thanks for everyone's comments. I concur with Megan and Emily on this. I would like to see the consistency with the previous units that have been constructed. So I would probably be inclined to entertain a motion to continue this, to hopefully have an opportunity to talk with the current HOA and see if there can be some progress regarding this.
And I'm happy to reach out to the HOA from staff's perspective to be that third party. And I think that worked well with that one meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And having this recording to show them might also help initiate them to vote on this item.
I guess to clarify, the design that matches section 1 has already been through this committee and approved.
Correct.
So short of you having construction drawings done, you could, if you had drawings done and permits, you could go start construction tomorrow.
Correct. Those plans are 90% done. We were close to.
So other than, I guess, other than the compelling, the city compelling the groups to come together, and obviously you wanted to do that design initially. So this is, not the preferred design from your perspective as well, from Lennar's perspective. So I think, in my opinion, continuing, because you already have an approval. You don't need this approval today if you can build the other one, right? So getting approval today, in a way, if there were enough people to vote on this today that voted yes, in a way, that doesn't help. It doesn't help the other homeowners. It helps you get construction started, but it doesn't really help the overall project, in my opinion. It just even if you were to go back and say, hey, let's meet and talk this through, what's the motivation to meet and talk it through at that point? Because you've got approval, they know you've got approval, they know you can start construction. So I guess from my perspective, my opinion would be for the city to get involved to push it through.
Okay, I'll make a motion to continue this and have the city get involved on every aspect that we possibly can. And Sean, if you can help with any homeowners that we may not have to get that word out there and maybe drag that into a community meeting. We certainly have a community venue out there to have that meeting at, I know. So that's my motion.
We have a
I will
motion-
second, and I will do anything I can to help get this done, but I don't think we're there yet.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't have to vote on the continuance, so we do have a motion in a second, but we will have this continued. Thank you. The next matter is a River Place PUD committee matter. It's case number PUD-23-2, River Place CRG Townhomes. It's a request to approve site design and architecture for River Place CRG Townhomes by Pulte Homes located near the intersection of East 96th Street and Allisonville Road, and we have Ross Hillary to present for the city.
Good evening. For the record, Ross Hillary, City of Fishers Assistant Director of Planning and Zoning. Before you tonight is the River Place PUD Committee, PUD 23-3, which is the River Place Townhomes by Pulte. In August of 2022, the River Place PUD Committee saw the first phase of the project come before you and was approved. That included 380 multifamily apartment, and that was with CRG residential. This project specifically tonight is for the for sale townhome product for the construction of 81 townhomes on 14.8 acres. The site plan on the left shows the full River Place layout, and the site plan on the right shows the area within the red rectangle. The for sale townhome projects will include 81 townhomes and will include 2 4-unit buildings, 5 5-unit buildings, and 8 6-unit buildings. Pulte Homes is requesting approval of the Ashton Cascade model that include a varied front and rear setback, providing modulations and rear patios. Here you can see the first elevation with the various grays and tan colors. The material shown on all 3 of these are fiber cement board with a masonry base on the front elevation. Here you can see the second color elevation, which is primarily white. And like I said, the materials are fiber cement board and a masonry base. And finally, the third color elevation that was included, and we'll talk about that in a second, is shown here, which varied shades of blue, white, and brown. Included in the packet, here you can see side and rear examples of a similar model within our community. This is located at the townhomes in Saxony North along Southeastern Parkway. Here you can see the side and rear articulation. I'll show these elevations, though they are kind of sometimes hard to see. Here you can see the 4-unit elevation provided by Pulte. The front elevation will match the approved rendering colors and materials. There will be 2 of these 4-unit buildings. Similar in nature to the 4-unit buildings, the 5-unit and 6-unit will match in elevation, color, and materials. There will be 5 of the 5 units and 8 of the 6-unit buildings. Veritas has provided the architectural consultant services and noted that per the provided elevations, the garage doors located on the front facade can be visually overpowering. So Veritas and staff agreed that the elevation should include garages with windows. Staff recommends that the committee approve color elevation 1 and color elevation 2, both that they could provide. Staff also recommends that the committee requires garage trellises where allowed to provide additional character and depth to those garages. Staff also recommends additional visual interest to the rear and side of the townhomes, which can be accomplished with a secondary material pattern such as board and batten or shake. Both of those examples are shown there. And staff will work with a petitioner during the subdivision improvement permit to mitigate the gravel shown on the elevations between the driveways. Staff will recommend this area to remain turf or planting beds when street trees are not suitable. So staff does recommend approval with the condition that the petitioner continues to work with staff with the following recommendations, as well as any requirements that this PUD committee puts on those. And those included color elevations 1 and 2, the addition of garage windows on all homes, garage trellises were permitted, and a visual interest on the side and rear accomplished with a secondary material. David George with CRG, as well as Rex Ramage with Pulte, are here to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Ross. We can hear from the petitioner.
Okay.
Good evening. Rex Ramage, Pulte Homes, 11590 North Meridian Street. I realize we have another meeting to get to, so I'll kind of keep this brief. Fortunately, I don't have a ton of history to go through, so maybe that works into our favor. Ross did a tremendous job. I would have said pretty much the same thing. So color elevations 1 and 2, we are happy to omit color elevation 3, which had multiple colors on various units. If that's not of interest, we can certainly take that off the table. And then what we would do is we're still deciding, and if there's input from the committee, please let us know. We would like to explore incorporating both of these designs into the community. So whether it's building 1, or I guess building A, color option 1, building B, color option 2, and kind of alternate our way through to give a varied streetscape, or if there's one preference from this committee, we're happy to take a look at that. Garage trellises. So the designs that we have here, the white screams more farmhouse, and it really is. The dark, you don't see it as much, but it truly is the farmhouse, just with a darker color scheme attached to it. A trellis is more of a craftsman style architectural feature, so we would not like to include the garage trellis in our design. We would certainly incorporate in side gables and rear gables the board and batten. We don't have any shake on the front elevations, so I think that would be kind of odd to include that on a side or rear facade, but we can definitely add that additional material in the gables there on the sides and rears. And then the only other thing I mentioned, or the garage doors with the windows, and then there's a certain design that Veritas called out. We have a garage door that we use that's very similar to exactly what Veritas had commented on, and we're willing to agree to that as well. And then the only other thing that I recall before I looked through my notes here was the strips between the driveways. So on a rear-loaded townhome, it looks really good because you're seeing a townhome without a garage door on the front, and it looks really nice with a lot of grass. Functionally, when you have a front-loaded townhome, you have garage, driveway, and the strips vary in width. And so when you have these cars, when you have people pulling in and out, it really does not lend itself to turf or grass just because it doesn't grow in very well. Sometimes you have to irrigate it, and then that gets oversaturated. And then also with mulch doesn't stay within the limits that it needs to be. It washes out constantly. It's all over driveways and sidewalks. So those two options we would definitely not prefer to have and would push back against. The rock can look very good. And then also if you were to run over the rock with a car tire or something, it doesn't create those ruts, in the spaces between the driveways. So I'll look through here. I don't think there was any other major comments, but open to questions, comments, concerns from the committee.
Thanks, Rex. Board, comments, questions?
I guess, in generally speaking, I agree with all the Veritas comments regarding the colors. I definitely would steer away from the multicolored version. I think that's just way too many colors going on. I guess I'm indifferent on the trellis over. I think it looks nice, but I don't know that it would be a requirement to me. I'd take the majority of the board's opinion on that. And I guess the question on regarding the space between the driveways on the development in Saxony, how is it treated at that location?
It was treated similar to the visual that you're seeing in color elevation 1.
Okay.
During that development, we were still under HSE utilities as well. So all street trees were relocated outside of what typically would be like a street tree. So if you do drive through there, it is fairly similar to that elevation.
Okay.
So there is that material and lacking of vegetation between those townhomes.
Okay. What is that dimension? Is it like 2 feet, 3 feet?
It varies depending on the handing or the spacing of the units, but I think it gets down to just shy of 3 in some spots, and then it gets closer to 8 in others.
Okay.
But I would add, I did take a look at 12 townhome communities in the city of Fishers after we got the comment. 9 out of the 12 definitely have rock. 1 has mulch, doesn't really look that great, to be completely honest. One has grass that has not grown in very well, and also you can see dips in it. And then 2 have mulch, which I think there might be more mulch in the driveway than there is in the planting bed.
Okay.
Thanks, Sean. Drew, any comments?
Yeah, on the garage trellis, was there a discussion about maintenance of that from a long-term standpoint? I don't know, Ross, if you all had any discussions on what material that was and if that would be a maintenance issue in the future.
We didn't have a discussion with Pulte on what that material would be. I would assume it would be whatever was applicable that could be constructed. I'm not sure if that can be constructed out of hardy plank or it would likely be a wood material.
I think so. We do offer a trellis on some of our homes. They are craftsman homes. That's the only home style that we do offer it on. It comes as a kind of a prefabricated piece, and I think it's actually aluminum coated. I don't know what the interior material is, but so it's not wood. Again, it's something that we've moved away from even on the single family homes, and I personally don't believe it adds anything here.
And our intent behind that comment was we felt like this was a lot of garage door. And we understand that this can't be a rear-loaded townhome product. And we also understand that the garage cannot be set back because then that would cantilever that top story and that would just look odd. And so we were trying to find a way to put some sort of feature in front of that garage to just set it back a bit. Trellis was what our staff came up with, but if there's any other recommendations, Sean, I don't know from an architectural perspective, if you have any suggestions on that. We were a bit at a loss, but it just felt like there was a lot of garage. So that's where that comment is coming from, just to give some clarification.
Yeah. I think architecturally, the color 2,
Yeah,
the
go
white,
back,
the all
go
white.
back.
The white?
Yeah, right
Yeah.
there.
So that one, I think the garage blends them a little more because everything is that kind of white, like you say, kind of craftsman style, white with dark trim, windows. And this one, I think, just because the garage doors are dark, it kind of draws your eye to it a little bit more, I think. So I don't know if it would benefit making the garage door the same color as the siding.
Well,
or not.
To that point, Veritas made the same comment, but it was actually make it darker, the same color as the trim. So I don't
Right.
know that I have a preference whether
Yeah.
it matches
I-
the siding or whether it matches the trim.
Yeah, I think for my preference, I'd make the trim, at least at the garage door, make the trim and the garage door the same as the siding, so it just kind of blends in a little bit more.
Let me ask this question. So it looks like there's an overhang going over that garage, at least from what I'm looking at in the picture?
Yes, sir.
I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, if I'm using the wrong term, please tell me. The corbels, can you put corbels on either end of the overhang? Is that,
Yeah.
am I right there? Am I saying that
Well, and I
correct?
think that actually shows up in the photo of the trellis. You can see kind of little corbels
Right,
above
but instead of
that.
going all the way across,
Right,
you're
you
just
just
going
at
on the
the-
ends
at
of
the
where that
corners.
overhang is, right? So you're bringing some sort of architectural feature to that front, kind of
Yeah.
trying to do that instead of going all over.
Maybe just a little bit of a bracket type
Yeah,
of a-
so, I mean, the other thing is I have absolutely no desire to have an aluminum trellis on any building that we have anywhere, okay? Because I'm gonna tell you right now, if any one of the kids play hockey, every one of those is gonna be dented, okay? Because my kid would dent it, trust me. So if they're wood, it's a different story, because the woods are gonna be able to take more abuse.
But it's more maintenance.
It is more maintenance for sure. I don't really have any major issues. I do like the windows on the garage door, so thanks Megan for picking that up. I'm okay with changing it to a darker door if that's what it feels right. I think the white looks good. I like the pillar almost look at the front of each garage. I do like that. I think that looks kind of really unique because you've got the rock wrap down below. The shake on the side and makes some sense to me. I don't know where I'd put it on the backside either. I don't really know. I mean, I need staff to maybe help me with that. I guess I'm indifferent, but I don't know how that's going to look because it looks like it's going to break up. I'm not really sure where the heck I'd put it without it having kind of stand out-ish to look kind of odd.
So
But-
to answer your question real quick,
Yep.
if you don't mind. So on the sides, you see that kind of white trim board
Yep.
between so it would be that entire gable.
Right.
And then just to kind of keep some consistency from the side to the rear, it would be, you know, the two-story option, or
Yep.
the two-story feature with the gable. I would put it just in the gable. I
Yep.
think that makes the most sense.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, again, so architecturally, it kind of continues on, which I think it does make sense. So
Correct.
I like that. I think, you know, overall, I'm definitely in favor of the staff recommendation. I'm really, you know, I don't think that I have an opinion on the gravel. I mean, I guess I just don't see where the heck the gravel's going to go, but maybe I'm missing something. But the show me where the gravel is. You have any picture that shows me where there's gravel? I mean, because 8 feet's a big swatch of gravel, right? So.
Right. It is.
And you guys are set way back in the property. I get it. You guys are way back
we
in the
are.
property.
We're also bound by 2 cemeteries. And
Right, yeah, I
and a
know
treatment
exactly where you're at.
facility,
I
so-
toured it one day with the mayor, and I never want to do that again.
Yeah.
So, so where does that go? Where does that gravel go? I mean, help me understand that a little better. In between buildings, are we just talking right?
Yeah, on the
in,
other,
in between driveways, yes.
Got it. Okay. So if it's just in between the driveways, I'm okay with the gravel there. I don't necessarily have any issue with the gravel there whatsoever. I mean, I understand staff's perspective on making it a planting, but I also see that stuff getting just torn up to all pieces. I just do.
There's a pretty big difference between 2 feet and 8 feet.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was going to be my
Yeah.
suggestion is
Yeah.
I could see the gravel in that narrow 2 to 3 foot wide because yes, any grass that's in there is going to get
Yeah, it's not going to grow.
It's not going to grow
It's not gonna
because
grow.
it's going to get the radiant heat from the driveway on either
Right.
side. It's just not going to grow.
Yeah, you have to
You
irrigate
could do
when daylight's
native
out.
plantings in there or whatever, but to your point, you're probably potentially going to run it over. But 8 feet wide, I think 8 feet wide is a pretty substantial width. I mean, that's I think you can get something to grow in there, whether it's grass or whether it's plantings or whatever.
So looking at the picture now that I understand where the gravel is, I think you're probably at a 5 foot max for me would probably be the limit of what I'd be willing to go width-wise. But if we're at 8 feet, we need to look at doing something. Squeeze and make the driveway wider, I don't know. Give me something there to kind of get it away from, 8 feet seems like, because you can pull cars up on there, and that's the last thing I want them to do is start parking cars all over the place,
that
right?
would be my concern too,
Right.
is that someone's just going to start using that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going
So-
to pull over into it because it's
Correct.
gravel.
Yeah, they'll go drive all the way across it. Sure. Right.
Thanks, Pete. Any-
I guess if you go back to the photo that showed the side and the rear elevation.
Yes.
And this is just a suggestion from looking at this, from the comment of the kind of board and batten or whatever. And I'm going to step away to point to this and then come back to the microphone. That kind of 2-story bump out area, I think
Yes.
that would be a perfect opportunity to wrap all 3 sides of that in board and batten, because you're going to see it from the end, you're also going to see it from the back, and it just, I think just visually it would provide a nice kind of accent. And I'll defer to your, anything that you guys do with staff, but that's just my opinion on
Sure.
an option to look at, I guess.
And, it's always going to seem like, hey, Rex doesn't want to do that. But
Yeah,
so
I understand.
So here's the exercise. In one of our adjacent communities to the west, where they're very, very particular about architecture, it's a house by house, option by option analysis, and it's, a hamster in a wheel.
Yeah.
And so we actually, there were some commitments made similar to that, and it just doesn't look very good. And I would also say, anything on the rears, no one's going to see. We have tree rows around all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's cemeteries on both sides, treatment plant to the north. So I'm indifferent. I would be willing to put it in the gables on the rear when they're available like that, but I
that
don't
was
think
just
you gain
my
much.
suggestion of, as working with staff, if that looks like it would make sense. And
Sure.
I understand it'd be different if you had units behind you and you were looking at each other's units.
Right.
Any
I
other
don't have any other
comments?
comments.
Well, I would entertain a motion.
Let's see if I can articulate this correctly. So I'm going to make a motion to approve with the staff recommendations of windows in the garages, with the shake on the side and gable tops. Okay.
Additional material in the gables on the sides.
Additional
and rear.
material in the gables. No more than 5 feet on the gravel in between the driveways. What am I missing, Megan? Give me all your staff recommendations. Oh, yeah, colors 1 and 2, for sure, yeah, absolutely. And then you asked for an opinion on the upfront side. I would not like to see 2 white buildings right next to one another, right? I think you need to mix them up as you go along. You need to vary as you're going down. I want to see them kind of stagger together. We do that all the time with colors in neighborhoods. We don't let them paint this house the same color when they're next door to each other.
Sure.
So I do want to see that going on. Did I miss anything?
No, but before we second that, so Elliot Holtgren is on the River Place PUD committee, and he is calling in, and he does have some comments. So I just wanted to give him an opportunity to speak before we
Wow.
move forward with that motion. Elliot, are you there?
Go ahead, Elliot.
Elliot, I can see your mouth moving, but we can't hear you.
It's a mute button, Elliot. Naval Academy grad, buddy.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Megan, either.
Oh, maybe it's a Tracy problem. I'm blaming Elliot. That's bad. Tony? Or Elliot, rather. Sorry. Elliot.
Can one of you speak?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Oh, hey, sorry, I was just, I'll keep it really brief. Sorry, guys, for not being present. I concur with everything Pete said. And in short, Elevation 3, not a fan, so throwing that out is great. And burying them, I think is what Pete was chiming on at the very end there. Between Elevation 1 and 2, I think is a good call as well. And then my last comment on the gravel piece, I know we're talking about shorting to no more than 5 feet. I also align with that comment. I just didn't know there's any opportunity to change the gravel coloring a little bit to try to offset it so it's not such a sea of gray on the driveways, but some slight variation in the coloring I think might do some good as well. But otherwise, I think I'm aligned with the rest of the comments made today.
Okay, and it is more of a decorative rock. It's not the gravel that you would see at a construction site. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Elliot. So does that change Pete's motion?
No. I'll add Elliot's comment in. I have no interest in aluminum trellises on these homes. Yeah, I just don't. I didn't put the trellis in my motion, I don't think.
You did
Right.
not.
So I left that one out.
We do have the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, do anybody have any questions on the motion I made? Because I probably do. I don't know if I can repeat it, but I want to make sure we got all that
Do we have that,
captured.
Megan, on your end?
Yeah, Kay, can you read back the conditions that we have written down?
So I have windows in the garage, board and batten.
Or shake.
Or additional material.
Additional
or
material, right?
5-foot gravel,
Max.
max. Thank you. Mixing up the colors between 1 and 2. And Elliot recommended a slight color variation in the gravel and no trellises.
Brilliant.
Did we get it?
Yes, you did, Kay. Thank you. So we do have a motion and a second. Kay, roll call, please.
Mr. Bender?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Curran?
Yes.
Mr. Holgren?
Yes.
Mr. Weingart is not with us. Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Thank
The
you.
motion does carry. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll work with staff on a couple other items, the gravel and then the material in the rear. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Megan, any staff communications? I know we're in overtime, but
Nope, no staff communications.
okay. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
To adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you.